Have you ever wondered how a man could connect so deeply with nature and animals that he became a saint? This is the story of Saint Francis of Assisi, a man who heard God's call and chose to live in perfect harmony with all creatures. Francis of Assisi, a wealthy and carefree young man, traded the riches of the world for a life of poverty and simplicity. He saw in every creature, from the smallest insect to the fiercest animal, a manifestation of divine creation. His famous Sermon to the Birds is an example of how he perceived beauty and spirituality in everything around him. But the story of Saint Francis goes beyond his relationship with nature. He was a reformer of the Church, founding the Franciscan Order, which spread worldwide. His teachings on poverty, brotherhood, and peace continue to inspire millions of people today. In this video, we will explore the life and legacy of Saint Francis of Assisi, a man who shows us that it is possible to live in harmony with God and all of creation. Origin and early years. Francis was born in Assisi, a small town in Italy, around 1181 or 1182. The son of a wealthy cloth merchant, he grew up surrounded by luxury and the opportunities that money could offer. From a young age, Francis had everything within his reach: parties, friends, fine clothes. However, amidst this comfort, there was a restlessness in his heart. He felt that life could not be reduced merely to fleeting pleasures and the incessant pursuit of wealth. The emptiness that accompanied him was a sign that something greater awaited him. Although his youth was marked by material abundance, Francis always had a special sensitivity. He was not content with just the tangible. There was something spiritual that called to him, even if he did not yet know how to name it. It was as if an inner voice told him that the true treasure was not in the coins his father accumulated, but in something much deeper. This search began to manifest in the small things of everyday life, in moments of solitary reflection, when he would wonder if he was truly living the life he was meant to. It was this dissatisfaction that began to shape his journey. Despite his family's expectations, Francis began to distance himself from banquets and business. He allowed himself to dream of something that, in the eyes of others, seemed like madness. But for him, it was a necessity. So, even without knowing exactly where he was going, he began to walk in the direction of a calling that would change not only his life but the history of all Christendom. And it is at this point that his story begins to transform, leading him to make decisions that would challenge everything he knew. Conversion and renunciation of material goods. Francis's conversion was a decisive moment, one that transforms a life forever. One day, while walking through the fields of Assisi, he encountered a leper. The Francis of old would have turned his face away, perhaps out of fear or disgust. But in that instant, something changed within him. He got off his horse, embraced the leper, and kissed him. It was as if, in that simple gesture, he had found the true meaning of compassion. And it was there that his profound inner change began. This was just the beginning of a journey that would lead him to renounce everything he owned. Francis realized that the wealth and comforts he once considered essential now seemed like burdens. He then decided to abandon his old life. In a public ceremony, before the whole city, Francis returned the clothes and money to his father, renouncing the material world. Dressed only in a simple cloak, he declared that from that moment on, he would have only God as his father. This radical act shocked everyone, but it was an expression of his new inner truth. Living in absolute poverty was not easy, but for Francis, this choice meant freedom. He no longer saw value in the accumulation of goods, but in simplicity and total surrender to divine love. Francis began to wander through the fields, preaching a message of detachment and trust in God. And with every step he took, he felt closer to the Creator, more aligned with his true calling. It was as if, by renouncing the world, he had found the path to a happiness that had previously been unknown to him. The Order of Friars Minor. Francis, in his journey of faith, attracted others who, like him, sought a life of simplicity and devotion. These followers were the first to join him in what would become the Order of Friars Minor, better known as Franciscans. They had no luxurious churches, no wealth. They lived on the road, preaching the gospel, helping the poor, and relying entirely on divine providence for their sustenance. Francis, with his contagious humility, led not by imposition but by the example of a life that inspired all those around him. Simplicity was the hallmark of the Franciscans. They dedicated themselves to a life of prayer, work, and service, all with a joy that captivated those who crossed their path. There was no division between the sacred and the mundane in their lives. Everything was done in God's name, with a spirit of love and humility. A practical example of this can be seen in the way they treated the needy. They did not just offer alms, but shared the little they had, often dividing their own meals. This commitment to Christian values spread quickly and attracted many others to the cause. Over time, the order of Friars Minor grew, but the essence remained the same: a life in community based on voluntary poverty and service to others. Francis did not seek power or influence. His goal was simply to live the gospel in an authentic and full way. And it was this purity of intention that caused the order to expand throughout Europe, leaving a legacy that endures to this day. However, the true wealth of this story lies in how Francis and his followers lived their faith, with an intensity that invites us to reflect on our own choices and priorities. Franciscan spirituality. Franciscan spirituality, so unique and profound, is rooted in three fundamental pillars: joy, simplicity, and absolute trust in God. Francis believed that true happiness was not found in material possessions, but in direct connection with the Creator and creation. He saw joy as a natural expression of life in God, something that should overflow in every gesture and word. It was not superficial joy, but that which springs from inner peace, even in the midst of difficulties. And this attitude was contagious, inspiring everyone around him to seek a fuller and happier life. Simplicity was also central to Francis's spirituality. For him, life should be lived without excess, focused on what truly matters: love for God and neighbor. In a world where we are constantly bombarded by distractions and temptations, Francis's example calls us to simplify, to remove the superfluous, and to focus on what is essential. And this does not mean renouncing beauty, but finding beauty in simple things, in what is authentic and pure. The simple life he preached invites us to rethink our choices and seek a more conscious and harmonious existence. Finally, unwavering trust in God was the foundation of Francis's entire life. He believed that by entrusting everything to God, there was no reason to fear the future. This trust allowed him and his followers to live without worries about tomorrow, certain that God would provide what was necessary. This teaching is a powerful reminder for all of us, who are so often consumed by anxiety and fear. Francis shows us that true security is not found in the things of this world, but in sincere faith and the certainty that, by walking with God, we are always on the right path. The daily life of a friar. The routine of a Franciscan friar was marked by disarming simplicity, reflecting the ideals that Francis so cherished. From the early hours of the day, prayer was at the center of everything. The friars began their mornings in silence, with morning prayers that connected their souls to the divine. This moment of introspection and spiritual communion was followed by simple tasks such as tending the garden, preparing bread, or helping clean the small chapel where they gathered. Each act, no matter how humble, was seen as an offering to God, performed with devotion and care. In addition to prayers and work, the friars played an active role in the community around them. Francis always encouraged his brothers to live close to the people, listening to their sorrows, offering advice, and, above all, being living examples of Christ's love. This manifested in various ways, whether by visiting the sick, welcoming the marginalized, or simply sharing a meal with the needy. The daily life of the friars was a silent but powerful testimony of the faith they professed. Throughout the day, the fraternity among them was strengthened through sharing and companionship, creating a community united by the common purpose of serving God and others. Despite the demands of fraternal life, there was also room for contemplation and moments of genuine joy. Francis always believed that true faith should not be burdensome but filled with serene joy. In the late afternoons, after a day of work and service, the friars often gathered to sing hymns, tell stories, and reinforce the bonds that united them. These small daily celebrations reminded everyone that, even in trials, it is possible to find God's grace. Thus, the daily life of a Franciscan friar was a constant balance between action and contemplation, between service and worship, always guided by the light of simplicity and divine love. Love for nature and creatures. Francis's love for nature was something that transcended the ordinary. For him, every element of creation was an expression of divine love, a reflection of God's goodness and beauty. He did not see animals, plants, or rivers as mere resources, but as brothers and sisters who shared the same Creator. The story of Francis and the wolf of Gubbio is famous, where instead of treating the animal as a threat, he spoke to the wolf, pacified it, and sealed an agreement of coexistence with the townspeople. This story is not just a metaphor, but a profound testimony of his belief that all creation deserves respect and care. Francis's relationship with nature was not just contemplative, but deeply practical. He encouraged his followers to live in harmony with the environment, respecting and protecting it. This love for creation led Francis to compose the Canticle of the Creatures, a hymn of praise to God for all beings, from the smallest to the most magnificent. This canticle is one of the first literary works in the Italian language and remains a powerful expression of the interconnectedness of all life. It is an invitation to see the world through the eyes of Francis, who recognized the presence of God in every corner of the universe. Francis's legacy in relation to nature is more relevant today than ever. In a time of environmental crisis, his example calls us to rethink our relationship with the planet and all living beings. His love for creation challenges us to be more aware of our impact on the environment and to seek ways to live more sustainably. Francis reminds us that the world is not ours to exploit but to care for, as faithful stewards of a gift that was lovingly entrusted to us by the Creator. Popular devotion to Saint Francis. The devotion to Saint Francis is one of the most vibrant and enduring within the Catholic tradition. His life and teachings have deeply touched the hearts of millions of faithful over the centuries, leading to the creation of various festivals and celebrations in his honor. October 4th, the date of his liturgical feast, is celebrated with great joy and reverence in many parts of the world. Churches and communities organize processions, special masses, and charity events, where the simplicity and love of Francis are remembered and celebrated with enthusiasm. The sanctuaries dedicated to Saint Francis are true centers of pilgrimage. Places like the Basilica of Saint Francis in Assisi, Italy, attract visitors from all corners of the globe. This sanctuary is a place not only of worship, but also of reflection on the values Francis promoted. Each year, thousands of pilgrims visit the site to seek inspiration, pray, and connect with the spirituality that Francis embodied. It is a space where people find peace and spiritual renewal, immersed in the environment that saw the birth of one of the most beloved figures in Christian history. Beyond Assisi, many other places around the world have shrines and churches dedicated to Saint Francis. In Brazil, for example, the convent of Saint Francis in Salvador is an important meeting point for devotees. These communities not only celebrate the life of Francis, but also follow his example of simplicity and service. The feasts and celebrations in his honor are opportunities to renew the commitment to social justice and aid to the needy, keeping the essence of the Franciscan legacy alive in daily life. Stigmata and final years. In the last years of his life, Francis experienced a transformation that few could have imagined. In a profoundly symbolic and spiritual episode, he received the stigmata, the marks of Christ's crucifixion on his body. These divine signs not only confirmed his deep identification with the suffering of Jesus, but also marked a culminating point in his spiritual journey. Despite the pains and challenges that accompanied the stigmata, Francis maintained an unwavering faith and a joy that, for many, was a testament to his intimate connection with God. Physical suffering could not extinguish the flame of faith that burned in his heart. On the contrary, Francis continued to praise God with an enthusiasm that transcended his physical limitations. He remained engaged in his activities of service and prayer, even when the pain became unbearable. His resilience and the way he dealt with suffering offered a powerful lesson about the strength of the spirit and the ability to find peace and purpose even amid the greatest adversities. As his life drew to a close, Francis's serenity and total surrender to God became increasingly evident. He accepted death with the same trust and humility with which he had lived, ready to find eternal rest in God. The way he faced his final days and how his testimony continued to inspire those around him are a fundamental part of his legacy. Francis not only lived an exemplary life of faith, but also ended it with the same dignity and devotion that characterized his existence. Legacy and canonization. After Francis's death in 1226, the impact of his life and teachings spread rapidly, and the Catholic Church soon recognized his sanctity. In 1228, just 2 years after his passing, Francis was canonized by Pope Gregory IX. This swift canonization not only validated his profound spirituality, but also solidified Francis's role as one of the most revered and influential saints of the Church. His life was a living expression of the Christian values that the Church sought to highlight and emulate. The legacy of Saint Francis transcended his time and place. He not only founded a religious order that still exists and flourishes today, but also left an indelible mark on how Christians and non-Christians approach spirituality and service. His emphasis on poverty, simplicity, and love for nature has become a source of inspiration for millions. Franciscan practices and teachings continue to influence how many view the world and strive to live a life of purpose and generosity. Francis's inspiration is visible in many areas of both Christian and secular life. His principles of humility and service, as well as his reverence for creation, have inspired movements of charity, spirituality, and ecology. Saint Francis remains a model of how to live with integrity and compassion, and his influence can be seen in various initiatives aimed at social and environmental well-being. His legacy remains alive, challenging and inspiring generations to seek a life more aligned with the values of simplicity and love for others. Conclusion. Are you ready to transform your life with the same intensity that Saint Francis transformed his? Francis's journey is a powerful invitation to reflect on what truly matters and to live with renewed purpose. Imagine incorporating simplicity, joy, and unconditional love into your daily life. What would change in your life if you began to value the little things more and see everyone around you as brothers and sisters? Think about how you can apply these practical lessons. Helping a neighbor, taking better care of the environment, or finding genuine joy in everyday tasks. If you are seeking a more meaningful life, full of purpose and true love, start now. Be inspired by the story of Saint Francis and make small changes that can have a big impact. If you enjoyed this video and want to continue exploring stories that can transform your life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Together, let's discover how to live a richer life, more connected to what truly matters.